the baseball and the football going on and our live shows with C.J. Mosley and our swabbing at Buffalo Wild Wings on Tuesday up in Owings Mills. Then Thursday night we went up to Carroll County to Greenmount Station and joined Zach Orr as well as Alex Lewis. Luke Jones, our Kemosabe, and all things coverer of Ravens and Orioles joining us now as we get ready for the bus trip on Sunday. We're headed up to Giant Stadium. If you need a ride or you want to go along, just throw me an email, nasty@WNST.net. Probably the best way to do that. And a birthday celebration that hopefully ends with 4-2. Luke, one thing we got, man, we got the Nationals out of the playoffs on Thursday night now, didn't we, huh?
Well, there's that and just an epic baseball game. I mean, that was great theater. I mean,
as good as it gets once Jack Nicholson was in the film, right?
That's the best compliment you can give a sporting event when you say it ends up being terrific theater, and that's what that was. Late Thursday night into the early morning Friday, but just incredible to see first of all, how Dave Roberts managed that game. I mean,
night and day from where we were last Tuesday, right?
Yeah. Well, and in fairness, you haven't seen a whole lot of managers do this. You're seeing a revolution, so to speak, in the postseason. And look, you can't do this over 162 games. I mean, Kenley Jansen clearly isn't going to be able to throw 50 pitches when he's asked to pitch 60-some times.
He might be unavailable for Game 1, right? Probably, sort of, kind of, maybe.
You would think,
yeah.
But it's the whole mindset of you worry about Game 1 when you get to Game 1.
Yeah, Buck didn't have that problem. Buck didn't have to worry about how things were going to work out in Arlington last week.
That's the thing. I mean, Zach Britton was well rested and well rested for the off season. But just I loved how the game was managed. I mean, think back to Blanton replacing Rich Hill in the third inning in a jam. I mean, you had that. Arias pitched really, really well, and for the spot. I mean, considering he's 20 years old. And then Kenley Jansen comes in the seventh inning, and a lot of people saying, can he get 9 outs? What's his limit? Well, the idea is that's a big spot right there in the seventh inning. The high leverage is right there. You don't know if the ninth inning is going to be high leverage at that point, because if the Nationals score 5 runs in the seventh inning, well, then the ninth inning isn't all that important. And on the flip side, Jansen pitches the seventh, and let's say the Dodgers score 5 times in the top of the eighth, well, then the ninth inning's not as big of a deal. So you always have, when you get to this point in the postseason, when you're in an elimination game, you can't just be thinking about what's going to happen 2 innings from now. You got to say, okay, how big is this spot right now? And that's what I really liked about the way that Roberts managed. And I tweeted it out in the seventh inning. Even if Jansen gives up runs, I really like that decision. You can base it on the results or you can base it on process. And I really like the process that Roberts used there. And then what can you say about Clayton Kershaw coming in 1 day rest, had already pitched on short rest in Game 4. Just, he only threw 7 pitches, but just incredible to see that, and just an incredible baseball game. I mean, there were bad decisions probably on both sides, especially on the National side with Dusty Baker. I still don't understand how you take Max Scherzer out after giving up, just throwing 99 pitches and giving up a solo homer that wasn't even that terrible of a pitch. He's your horse. Ride him. We're not talking about a number 3 starter there.
Ain't no great. Tomorrow, baby. There's just right now.
Yeah, right. The terrible send with Worth, where he's just now getting the home plate. But those bad decisions aside, this was still just a terrific, entertaining piece of theater, and it's why I love October so much.
I tell you what, man, we've had a week and 2 days of postseason baseball. We've had a lot of really good baseball. I mean, some bad games too, but by and large, there have been a lot of managerial decisions that have factored into this in both of those wild card games hugely.
Sure.
And then just sort of, how Toronto has been impressive, and how on the other side Boston wasn't impressive, but maybe you'd say Cleveland was. We got an interesting week of baseball, and certainly the backdrop on all of this is the country of Canada involved in this with the Blue Jays, Cleveland maybe having 2 parades, Chicago Cubs involved, and the Dodgers back in this thing with the big city the Chicago-LA thing going on. There's a little something for everybody here, I think. It's some good teams.
There really is. And, you think about it, all these teams, are in some sort of a drought. I mean, the Cubs are the extreme. Cleveland pretty extreme after them.
Cleveland's pretty extreme, dude. I mean, how many people are breathing that remember an Indians World Series?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking 1948. I mean,
championship.
We're
I'm not talking about the
70 years. The Indians haven't been to the series since 97.
Bob Feller, man. Like that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, and then I mean, even the Dodgers. It's been 88 for them, and Toronto 93. So I mean, you have something for everyone. What you just said. I mean, it's very poignant. This is going to be. I think I'm really looking forward to the ALCS. I mean, Cleveland and Toronto, I think I want to say it was late August, played a really entertaining series. I didn't get to see it because, it's Cleveland and Toronto.
Toronto's always entertaining. I mean, they might fight any night.
Well, sure. But I just remember reading several national reporters and reporters that were covering that series saying, man, that was some entertaining baseball. That looked like a playoff kind of series. And to see what Toronto's done, despite the fact that they did not play their best baseball in September, so kind of shows once again momentum kind of overrated, right? They didn't swing the bats well in September. Their pitching faltered, but they were able to put things together. And this is kind of what everyone thought they would be in 2016. The hitting came alive against Texas, and I mean their starting pitching has been. I don't think anyone thought it would be as good as it's been. I mean, you look at the fact they're going to have Estrada going in Game 1. I mean, you have Happ, who's been such a big surprise. He starts Game 2. But that aside, I mean, that Toronto team's just put everything together. They play really good defense, which I think has been a big, kind of the underrated difference in what they've been able to do the last couple years as opposed to before that when they still hit the ball, but they didn't do other things as well. And then on the Cleveland side, I mean, we were just praising Roberts using Kenley Jansen. I mean, look at the way that Terry Francona used Andrew Miller.
Tito! Well, yeah, I mean, that's where the Royals 2 years ago just kicked their ass in the bullpen, right? I mean,
but even that, I mean, I hear what you're saying. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that Kansas City bullpen was phenomenal, and still is when healthy. But even just the use of Miller individually, I mean, Kansas City, it was still Herrera, Davis, and
they had
Holland.
3 Millers, right?
Yeah, it was but it was slotted.
We had the real Miller, by the way, at one point.
But just the conventional way of doing it. Terry Francona said, "I'll use Andrew Miller in the 5th inning if I need to. I'll use him in the 6th inning if I need to." Now, in a 7-game series, it'll be interesting to see if there's some hidden costs there that surfaces later in the series. Maybe he wears down a little bit more. We already said what happens with Jansen in the NLCS now, what happens with Kershaw, quite frankly, when you make these kind of moves. But it just, it goes to show that we need to get away from this thinking that the closer can only pitch in a save situation. Buck Showalter. As much as I love him as a manager.
He'll never hear the end. I mean, I tweeted it 10 seconds after that.
Sure.
Like, that will be the all-time gaffe of all-time gaffes in wild card games in the postseason to leave the best closer in the sport on the bench. I mean, not many managers will have the best closer in the world who's been perfect on their bench in a playoff game to use or not use in this case, right?
Yeah, it's like I said to you at the time, I wrote about it. I still feel this way over a week later. And look, I don't want to see Buck Showalter fired. I still think he's a damn good manager, but he really messed up there not using Zach Britton. I mean, what we've seen in the postseason since then just illustrates that. Andrew Miller has been used masterfully by Terry Francona. He's used them whenever he saw it to be fit, and I think that's how you have to treat your best reliever. I mean, is it the 9th inning sometimes still? Yeah, sure. No, I mean, no one's saying that of just pitching the 9th inning is meaningless. No one's saying that whatsoever. The thought is that it's not just one size fits all, that the 9th inning is always going to be your biggest spot, especially when you're in the postseason. We talked about it. I mean, Jansen came in, in the 7th inning. I mean, that was a very dangerous time in the game with the Dodgers trying to protect a 1-run lead. I mean, again, you hold the lead there, and maybe your offense scores 5 times, and then the 9th inning doesn't really matter nearly as much. Isn't nearly the kind of leverage. I just like the thinking of saying, you know what? Every out is critical in this ball game. That's why starting pitchers are valued. So, they pitch the first 6.
There's no other game where every out costs you your life. On any other night of the year, except sort of a clinch night in September, that losing the game means the end of the end, right? And that's the last thing for you. And I do want to get to some football because we're going up to the Meadowlands. Of course, Luke Jones here. Justin Turner came on. First off, the game didn't end until 20 minutes to 1, right? I mean, let's start with that. So people weren't awake. They did the champagne thing, and, Kershaw came out and said his piece and whatever. Justin Turner came out and said something very poignant. I'll sort of paraphrase it. He said, we looked out in the outfield, and we saw Kirsch, they call him Kirsch, coming into the game, and we knew that was the guy we wanted with the ball. And I thought to myself, there's not one Oriole player that could walk into Buck Showalter and say, you know what, with Encarnacion coming up to the plate, we wanted Ubaldo with our season on the line. That's who we wanted on the hill. There's no one that wanted that. No one. Peter Angelos didn't want that. Dan Duquette didn't. No one wanted that but Buck. And there's that peace of mind that if Zach Britton's walking out, that they don't even know what that looks like to lose this year. And in the case of the Dodgers, they had never seen Clayton Kershaw walk out of a bullpen before, and yet he walks into that firestorm on that chilly night with the game on the line, with runners on base, and here he comes. And you know what they thought? He's going to get us a couple outs here, and we're going to go have some champagne. And you could see that with Justin Turner, but the first thing he said was, we saw Kershaw come in, we knew it was okay. And I'm like, how did you know it was okay? I mean, he's not a relief pitcher, right?
Well, I mean, it's just that confidence that you have in that guy.
But the okay part is if he gives up a 3-run home run and you walk off there, you know what you say? You lost with your guy. You lost with your guy. Not with a guy on pitch 58 who only throws 18 pitches most nights, right?
Or not with a guy that was...
Some guy from Albuquerque. Yeah, I got you.
Or a guy who pitched well over the last 6 weeks of the season but was a lousy starting pitcher for most of the year.
By the way, they're not in Albuquerque anymore. I know.
Right,
that.
Right.
I know that.
But, I mean, no, it's absolutely true, and that's why you have to go with your best. And look, if Clayton Kershaw didn't pitch on Thursday night, that didn't mean that Dave Roberts was a bad manager or that Kershaw was not mentally tough. He was on one-day rest. This was a case where Roberts said flat out he absolutely would not use Kershaw. But then it came to pass that late in the game he said, Kershaw went to him and said, hey, I feel good. If you need me for a couple outs, don't hesitate. So,
it's my day to throw.
I mean, well, it actually, I don't think it even was. I guess Friday would have been, technically, if you talk about a normal starter's routine.
Is he going to go game 3, you think, now? Is that pretty much the way it's going to go?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I would think. I mean, right now, it's that's where the funny part of this is. I mean, we'll see how this all plays out. And Dusty Baker even said this after the game. He'll be interested to see what Jansen and Kershaw's availability is. But, I guess Maeda for game 1 for the Dodgers. And then after that, it's kind of, all right, you kind of see how everyone feels, I suppose. But you worry about that after the fact because they're the ones saying, we're getting ready to play the Cubs, and the Nationals are the ones saying, well, we're going home. But it was, the point you made and what Justin Turner said, I heard the interview as well. I mean, it was just, it really speaks to when you have someone with that level of confidence, whether you're talking about a closer or whether you're talking about the best, for my money, over the last 5 years, the best pitcher on the planet in Clayton Kershaw, who, I've heard, I know the narrative that he hasn't fared as well in the postseason, but the results over the regular season speak for themselves. That's the guy you wanted in there. If there was any way that it was possible from a health and from an energy standpoint, and it was clearly for him. Now, we'll see if there are any lingering effects there. I think that's fair to at least acknowledge that, but he came in the biggest spot of the season, and he got the job done. And the fact that he was just there to potentially get the job done, knowing that you were going to go down with your absolute best. I mean, if the Dodgers, let's say Murphy hits a 2-run homer there, but the Dodgers, some people will second-guess it, but I wouldn't, because you went down with Jansen throwing 51 pitches, your dominating closer, and you brought in Clayton Kershaw to try to get the final 2 outs. I mean, what more can you ask for in that spot, other than saying, well, wish your offense maybe could have scored some runs, more runs a little bit earlier in the game to make it a little easier on you. But beyond that, you went down with your best 2, and in this case, they came out on top with their best 2, and I really commend them for doing that. we'll see how it plays out. They're going to be underdogs against the Cubs, as they should be. The Cubs are the best team in baseball this year, but just terrific to be able to watch that on Thursday night, and very much looking forward to both of these LCS series.
He is Luke Jones. We will be watching baseball all weekend, and of course, he and I boarding our WNST bus trip to the Meadowlands. And we've talked a lot of football this week, right? I mean, we had an hour with C.J. Mosley, we had an hour with Zach Orr, as well as Alex Lewis on Thursday night at Greenmount Station and up at Buffalo Wild Wings and Owings Mills. And we're heading into this game, and we're heading into these 2 games and 2 trips up to the swamps of Jersey, as they say. Some thoughts about who's healthy and who's not. I mean, we've talked about the game all week, and we know about the Giants. We know about the Ravens' woes. We know about the offensive coordinator. We saw Marty Morningwig's press conference, and we do hope they get a little better as the season goes on as well. But really, this is about who's going to be on the field, right? Whether Ronnie Stanley's going to start at left tackle and whether we're going to get some semblance of a base offense. And I don't know that that's possible until Yanda gets healthy, until C.J. Mosley gets – I mean, we may go into this thing with a lot of, without a couple of our best players.
Well, at least a couple of them. I mean, going off the first couple days of practice this week, first couple injury reports of the week. Of course, everyone be on the WNST.net tech service to get the final injury report sent directly to your mobile device. But Elvis Dumerville back on the injury report with the foot. I mean, that doesn't sound encouraging. For him to take a total of 45 snaps in his 2 games. Since coming back from off-season foot surgery, and he's back on the injury report. I mean, we'll see. We haven't heard anything definitive, but you read the tea leaves there. That doesn't sound good. That doesn't sound encouraging. Ronnie Stanley returned to practice on Thursday on a limited basis. What we were able to see as media in the first 30 minutes that they have open for us to watch looked pretty good. Now, he hasn't practiced in a few weeks, so we'll see how he fares going into the weekend. That was the one encouraging piece of news from Thursday's practice. But you go down the list. I mean, Steve Smith's still dealing with the ankle. I would think if there's any way possible for him to go, he'll try to go. But it's going to be a pain tolerance thing, and that's not something to make to kind of just assume that he's going to be okay. I mean, that's the same. That's the ankle of the same leg that he had the Achilles. And keep in mind, I mean, it's been talked about, it's been well documented. There was some atrophy in that right leg. That right leg, that calf, that lower leg is smaller than the left one. So you wonder how that might have contributed to the ankle. You wonder how that might contribute to him healing as quickly as he'd like. So we don't know there. C.J. Mosley, that one I'm not overly optimistic about. He's missed practice. I know he's hoping
he could
to be
play if he stays off it all week. He's the kind of guy they would let play on Sunday.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, it's a hamstring. It's one thing to talk about a turned ankle or some of these other issues that ultimately are pain tolerance things. A hamstring has such a high frequency to re-injure or to have a setback that I think you got to be really careful.
What happens there? Who slides in? Zach slides in? What's going to happen in the defense?
Well, I mean, Zach Orr, he becomes the guy who calls the signal, or calls the defense.
Where's the helmet?
In the huddle.
Right?
He has the helmet mic, and I would think, and this is just a guess, and it's based on what we saw on Sunday after he left the Washington game. We might see Albert McClellan slide inside, and then that opens the door for more time for Zadarius Smith and probably Kamale Correa playing on the outside. Some people have asked me about Correa playing inside. From what I've gathered, and again, we don't get to watch all practice to know for sure, from what I've gathered, I think they've kind of had him focus on playing outside linebacker at this point. I think they decided about 3 weeks into training camp that they were putting too much on his plate, trying to have him learn
the middle of the field,
positions.
Yeah.
It was just kind of information overload for a rookie. And the Ravens, it's been said over the years, this is a pretty complicated defensive system that has been simplified this year, but still a lot for a rookie to try to consume, so to speak. So I would think he could be in the mix on the outside, but I'm guessing now we would certainly see Zach Orr handle the responsibilities of calling the signals for the defense, but probably McClellan inside. But Correa could still be in the mix there, I suppose, hypothetically. But Mosley, that's the one I can't say I'm terribly optimistic about. And then the other one that we didn't mention, Marshall Yanda has missed practice this week with the shoulder. I know there was a report from Jason Lockenfora saying that he is unlikely to play. I'm never going to count out Marshall Yanda because I've seen him play when he was counted out, quite frankly.
I've seen the cattle prod, so that's all I need.
Yeah, oh, sure. But at the same time, again, as much as the Ravens really, really want to have this game, and as much as we perceive it as a game, these two games being games they need to win, at the same time, you can't compromise the second half of the season. You can't have C.J. Mosley go out there if there's a very real chance of him suffering a setback, and then he's gone for 7 weeks. I mean, you got to be smart as much as you can. As much as you want to win on Sunday, you still got to be thinking about the big picture. So, what that means for Yanda, what that means for Wagner, what that means for Steve Smith, Mosley, Doomerville, Stanley, who did practice but had a fairly, missed over 2 weeks of practice. It's just it's unsettling right now. As much as there's this big unknown as far as what Marty Mornhinweg's going to do with this offense. I mean, we assume run the ball more. We assume take more vertical shots, but it's not just that simple. There has to be a progression in how you do that. There's an art to play calling, and it starts up front. If you can't open running lanes for Terrence West and Kenneth Dixon and Buck Allen, and if you can't protect Joe Flacco, then, well, you know what? That formula that Mark Trestman was beaten up for not following, and rightfully so, that formula becomes a lot more difficult to follow. It's going to start with the offensive line, but right now, very, very unsettling going into the weekend. About the only saving grace from that regard is, this is a New York Giants team that's not particularly good. You hope you can find some things offensively. You hope a few of these guys are able to go on Sunday, steal a win, try to do the same against the Jets next week, and then get to that bye week with Mornhinweg having a chance to really put his fingerprints on his offense with a week to kind of just exhale and say, all right, what do we want to do? And then, more importantly, probably at this moment even, gives these guys that are banged up a chance to heal and prepare, then get themselves right physically for the second half.
A lot of great games, man. Bengals playing the Patriots in an early game on Sunday. Falcons and the Seahawks. Cowboys and the Packers. And, of course, we'll be at Buffalo Wild Wings on Monday night for the Jets and the Cardinals doing best seat in the house. Luke will be handling that. I will be at the Gridiron Halloween Bash on Monday. Big thanks to Lisa Raciniak, John Baylog, everybody who takes care of that, Kevin Byrne from the Ravens. So don't have a costume yet, but I'm sure it'll be something very, very scary on Monday. We got a lot of baseball to watch. We got college football and, of course, the Terps taking on the Golden Gophers of Minnesota as well. You can reach Luke, Baltimore Luke, out on Twitter, as well as Luke at WNST.net. I'm out in the Bahia Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We come in crystal clear. Morning newspaper ships at 7 a.m. to your email inbox. That's free of charge and powered up by Planet Fitness. And PlanetOfTriumphs.com is a great place to get some inspiration over the weekend. Last but never least, as Luke said, get on the WNST text service. You'll get all the injuries first. You'll know what's going on Sunday morning. Before the game, we will be up at the Meadowlands. We do have a few seats left on the bus. Our WNST text service is powered up by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard and Dennis Colatzis here each and every Thursday, as well as the replay on Sunday morning, getting you ready for Ravens football. Big thanks to Greenmount Station, Buffalo Wild Wings up in Owings Mills for hosting us this week. C.J. Mosley, if you haven't heard that, you haven't heard Alex Lewis or Zach Orr, who also joined us, also all got swabbed for the bone marrow registry this week. We swabbed 3 Ravens for There Goes My Hero and for DKMS and Delete Blood Cancer. All right, we got a lot of things happening around here, including me running out to Vegas to jam with Mick and the Stones next week. I'm excited. It's birthday weekend. We're having fun. I'm Nestor. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. Streaming live on Facebook Live, as well as YouTube on our WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Taos in Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.